Is intermittent fasting good for you? That is something that I hear from women all the time. Whether it's I'm doing a consult with them, whether we're chatting on Instagram DM, whatever it might be, I hear this question a lot. It is a very confusing topic. Whether you're coming to this video and you haven't tried intermittent fasting yet, or maybe you have been doing it for a while and you felt great, but now you don't feel as good, it's still a really confusing topic, right? So I want to take a little bit of time in this video to break down, like, what are the good things about intermittent fasting, but maybe what are some of the negative effects that maybe you don't hear, or just to give you more information about it so you can make the right decision to say, hey, is intermittent fasting good for me right now, or maybe not? So stick around if you want to hear more on this topic. So first, I want to say, and just start off by, you might look at the title of this video and think, oh, she's going to tell me if this is good for me or not. But I want to just help to give you more information so that you can decide that. My goal is not to tell you if you should do this or not. My goal is to give you information so that you can make an informed decision for where you are and what you feel is best for you. Now, of course, I'm here to help. If you're like, I seriously still don't know. I love having conversations with about this topic, with women and about other topics too. So if that's something you can benefit, you can definitely schedule a free call on my website, and I will put that link in the description of this video. But let's dig into a little bit more information about intermittent fasting. So what is intermittent fasting? First off, I'm just going to give you just a little parameters that normally go along with this. Typically, intermittent fasting isn't necessarily following a specific way of eating. It's just a pattern of eating throughout the day. And to just sidestep all of the different ways you can intermittent fast, the most popular is 16-8. 16 hours of fasting and 8 hours of eating. And so I want to just talk a little bit about the benefits of intermittent fasting, because by and large, you can find all of the benefits of intermittent fasting. So you've probably heard most of these before, but the most popular ones are probably weight loss, energy, brain health, and decreased inflammation, maybe even hormonal health. That might be another one that you've heard. So those are some of the benefits that you might have heard. So when you fast, it actually increases levels of the human growth hormone, which can promote fat loss. It can affect the way that your body uptakes insulin. So in a short period of time, it can increase in insulin sensitivity. It can also affect hormone levels, and it's been touted that it can help to balance them. It can actually change gene expression. So the way that your body responds to your environment, to what you put in it. Autophagy is another big benefit to fasting, which is really recycling and getting rid of old cells. Brain health is another big one, which would be like focus and just mental clarity. A lot of people have done fasting in the past, or, you hear a lot about brain health when you hear about fasting. But what about all the studies? There are a lot of studies done on fasting, but most of them, if you look at what they're studying, it's men and animals. It's not women. So a lot of times the studies that you might see, if you dig a little bit deeper, they're actually done on men. And I'll tell you why, because men and animals, they stand up a lot better to the longevity of fasting than women do. And let's talk a little bit about why that might be. So what actually goes on in your body when you fast? So what happens at a physiological level? When we fast and we don't have glucose coming in from food, our blood sugar drops. And so unless we give it food, unless we give it the source that it's meant to run on, it's going to have to rely on another source to get energy. And most of the time, that is the adrenaline glands that it's going to trigger to release stress hormones to raise our blood sugar back up. It's going to need cortisol. It's going to need adrenaline. From a basic standpoint, that's what's going on. And so sort of the issue that happens is, especially with women, our bodies are very sensitive to stress. And so most of us, especially this day and time, 2021, I'm at the very end of 2021 at the time that I'm recording this video, we are already in a state of stress in general. And so whenever we're already in that state, and then stress triggers more stress on top of this, it can be an additive effect that might not be the best idea. And again, this is depending on where you're at in your health journey and in your life. But as a whole, we don't thrive in a stressful state. And that's probably something that you already knew. And so whenever you are entering a state of fasting, you are entering a state of survival mode, which in turn is a stress on your body. And that's just plain and simple. So if you are maybe not under a lot of stress right now, fasting might be something that you want to incorporate. I do think as women, and I'm not going to talk a whole lot about this, we need to, at least if you are going to implement this into somewhat of a, consistent routine, we need to take into account where we are at in our cycle, because that really matters in our whole grand scheme of our health and our hormones. And we are just cyclical beings as women. Men have a 24-hour cycle. We have a 28-day cycle. And so you have to take that into account when you're thinking about fasting and putting more stress on your body, and when, what time of the months might that be okay, and what time of the months might not that be the best idea. So that's definitely, no matter what you do, go and look more into that subject. But as a whole, whenever we fast, it does do something to the way that we uptake insulin. And in the interim, it might make us more insulin sensitive, but in the long term, it makes us more insulin resistant. It also can affect our stomach acid, and that can suffer over time. And as a whole, our body's just not feeling safe. And so say you skip breakfast and go to lunch. Well, that lunchtime meal is going to be seen as something that needs to be stored just in case. Because if we're in a survival state and we don't know when we're going to get food next, our body tends to hold on to the food that we eat. And so in the long term, you might have more weight gain, whereas in the short term, you might have that weight loss. Long term, you might have more weight gain because our body is just in this stressful state and it thinks it needs to hold on to all these things. When you aren't consistently fueling your body with nourishment and with glucose, your liver isn't focused on what it should be doing, which is detox. And so it's trying to kind of compensate. And so it can't really do what it needs to be doing. So that's another issue. And so endometriosis and maybe bad PMS type symptoms can happen if fasting continues over time. Also, our thyroid health. It can come at an expense to our thyroid hormones. And a really interesting fact is we need glucose to convert T4 to T3, which is active. We want that active thyroid in our body to be doing what it needs to be doing. And so what's not in abundance when we don't eat? Glucose. And so thyroid health can suffer over time if we continue to intermittent fast and not give our body its preferred fuel. So what if you're like, Kari, I'm kind of just fasting intuitively, let's say, right? I just don't eat breakfast because I'm not hungry. I want you to see that that's actually a problem. It's not the answer to a broken system to just continue going with that, because it's just kind of like, well, I'm not hungry. If you wake up and you don't have an appetite, or the thought of food makes you sick, then that's a really good sign that you're probably living in a state of stress/survival. And continuing not to fuel your body is going to keep you in that cycle. And so a lot of people, what do? They skip breakfast and they just drink coffee. And hey, guys, I have been down this road because we hear all of these benefits and we think, oh, we're just going to make life easier. We're just going to skip breakfast and then we're going to drink a coffee concoction. That is a recipe for some stress on your body. I'll just put it that way. So what do we do about this, right? These are just some things to think about, especially over time. I want you to see that maybe a short period of fasting might not be so bad on your body, but really it's when we just keep having these longer fasting periods, day after day after day, month, year after year, it can really take a toll on our body. And our body and our cyclical rhythm in a 24-hour period, we have a fasting period, and it's overnight. Whenever you sleep, you fast. And so I think at a really good place to maybe think about, okay, if you're intermittent fasting, you're doing that 16-hour window, hey, let's maybe keep bumping that down to where do we get to 12 hours of fasting. For me, that's a really good place. 12 to 14 hours is a really good place. Now for you, it just depends. If you're under a lot of stress, it might not be. But for most people, I feel like 12 hours would be a good place to kind of be in the middle of that. So to kind of get on the right path here, it's a really great thing to just try to meet our simple biological needs. It really can be that simple. And it might be what makes or breaks your hormones. Not your hormones, your health, your overall health. Because whenever our needs are met, our body is going to feel safe and it's going to return back to the state that it should be in, right? It's going to get out of that stressful state. And so just to kind of recap, if you have been doing intermittent fasting, you might have felt really amazing when you first started doing it. Stress hormones in excess, which is what happens when we fast for those longer periods of time, can make you feel like Superwoman. You can have so much energy and mental clarity, but it basically depletes your stores of the glucose. And over time, you're just not going to be operating optimally and things are going to start burning out. That's kind of what happens over time. So I want you to think about it. And I don't think that you would ever think, well, I want my thyroid to suffer, or I want my detox pathways to suffer, or I don't care about my hormones. What about reproductive health? Have you ever thought, I want to teach my body to store food as fat instead of fuel? You don't want to age more rapidly, do you? Of course not. You don't want to be sort of a person that is irritable and is just kind of in a bad mood all the time. But honestly, that is what happens when we intermittent fast for long periods of time. It burns out these different parts of our body, and we start to see some serious imbalances that start to show up as these types of symptoms. And so I hope this at least gives you a good look at, is intermittent fasting good for you? You're going to have to decide that. But maybe this will allow you to make a more informed decision. That is my goal with this video. And I love talking about different topics such as these because it can be really overwhelming with all the information that we see and hear from all these different places, right? And so if that's you, I like to do little bits of information like videos, and I love Instagram, but what I have decided that would be better is to just kind of give you a better, bigger picture in the form of a webinar. So I do a bi-weekly webinar every other Thursday. And so I would love to invite you to that. If you really feel like I want to dig more into what's the bigger picture in my health and how can I really get back on track, and even what's one way that I can filter all of the things that I'm hearing through just one filter that I can filter all that information through to really get back on track and to figure out what's really going on so that I can get my health back. That is what you're going to find out in this webinar. So I'm going to put the link for that in the description if you want to sign up for my next live webinar. I would love that. If you just want to have a conversation around this, please feel free to schedule one of those calls, one of those free calls. I would love to hop on the phone and just chat to see how I can help you. Also, another thing is, I love to have conversations in the Instagram DMs. So make sure to follow me on Instagram. I share content over there and just love to hang out on that platform. So thank you for joining me on this video, and I will see you on the next one.